Welcome to our care meeting. I'm
Excellent.
super excited to have you with us today to hear all the amazing things I've had the pleasure of learning during our interview last year. So guys, joining us today is Mr. Will Reeve. He is Superman's son, or Christopher Reeve's son, who was the most beloved Superman of all times. And he's now a correspondent for Good Morning America. And most importantly, he serves on the board of directors for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. The foundation was created by his parents in efforts to cure spinal cord injury by funding research and improving the quality of life for individuals and families impacted by this condition. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Mr. Reeve. You can go ahead and get started.
Haven't we talked about this Mr. Reeve thing? It's Will.
Well,
Please, come on.
of course I have it.
I totally understand. I was texting with a friend's mom today who I've known for 20 years, and I still called her Mrs.
Yeah.
Harrington. I get it. But in all seriousness, thank you for that intro. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you for having me. I
Thank
just
you.
before I get into my whole spiel, I would just like this group to know the sort of random fate of circumstance that brought me, I guess, here now, but just into Carol's life. Like it was pre-pandemic, right? So like at least a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I never check my DMs on Instagram, not because I think I'm too cool, not because I'm somebody. I just don't look at them. But for some reason, I was going through and I had one from you, and I decided to read it, and I responded, and it turns out that you're the most amazing, respectful, intelligent, driven, like put together. Like how old are you?
I'm 16.
16. Oh my God, the future's in good hands. So like that led to us having a nice chat for a project you were doing. I got to tell you a little bit about what we do at the Reeve Foundation. I spoke to your mom on the phone. You guys sent me a soccer jersey. Like it was the coolest thing. So I'm so glad to get to be here with you all today. That is the intro is true. That is all who I am. I'm sitting here in very dreary, cold, wet New York. Just riding out this pandemic, trying to do, just doing my thing and feeling fortunate for my health and my well-being. And I think to get into sort of what we're here to talk about, is I've always been pretty aware of my good fortune, literally down to the point of being able to get up and walk across the room to get a drink of water, because I grew up with right before my third birthday, my dad, Christopher Reeve, was paralyzed in a horseback riding accident, and that defined the next 9 years of my life, from age 3 to age 12, until he passed away, due mostly to complications from his spinal cord injury. And then my mom, Dana Reeve, passed away a year and a half later. But growing up, I always was fully aware of just the good fortune that those of us who are able to walk have, because I saw the toll that it took on my dad and on my mom. And when I watched them not only live their daily lives as husband and wife, as parents to me, as professionals working, trying to make a living, trying to do things that fulfilled their passions, all under the umbrella of making sure that my dad stayed alive on a daily basis, and that he was constantly working towards trying to get out of his wheelchair. He was obsessed with finding cures for spinal cord injury, and my mom was obsessed with taking care of my dad, because that was the role that she was thrust into as primary caregiver. And that now today is the mission of the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. Our slogan is today's care, tomorrow's cure. And that represents each of my parents. If you see the logo for the Reeve Foundation, it's a dual flame that represents my parents. There's a C and a D in the logo. And today's care is what my mom was entirely focused on ensuring and enhancing and hopefully improving the quality of life for people living with paralysis. And my dad was obsessed with getting out of his wheelchair and finding a cure for spinal cord injury. And that is what we do today and will continue to do at the Reeve Foundation until we have realized my father's dream of a world of empty wheelchairs. So to that end, I brought some notes just because I want to get the numbers right. This number I'll never forget, and this is something to keep in mind as you go around in your daily life. 1 in 50 Americans is living with some form of paralysis. There are millions of people in this country with spinal cord injury or other forms of paralysis. So even if you don't think that you know someone in your life, in your family, in your social circle, in your community, chances are you probably do. And their lives are made infinitely more difficult just by the fact that they can't do the simplest of tasks for themselves. The first things that go away, other than your ability to move when you get a spinal cord injury, are all these secondary functions like bladder and bowel control, sexual function, temperature regulation. You'll see people in wheelchairs on a 90-degree day needing to wear a sweater because to regulate their temperature. You'll see them on a freezing cold day stripped down to a t-shirt. It's not a pleasant way to live, and that's something that I lived with my entire life. We've invested nearly $140 million over the lifespan of our organization into trying to find cures for paralysis. We're partnered with the leading research labs and other institutions worldwide, really, to try to find cures. For decades, the sort of the leading edge, the leading thought was that stem cell therapy and stem cell research were going to be what won the day. And that still may prove to be true. Stem cells are a still fruitful frontier that is yet to be fully explored. But right now, what we're doing mostly at the Reeve Foundation is something that's really exciting, is what we call the big idea, which is a funded study to implant a device in the base of a patient's spine, and it's connected to electrodes within the body that are also implanted during this procedure. And when it's turned on, in layman's terms, it reminds the spinal cord of what it can do. And what the spinal cord does, what our spinal cords do, is sends messages from the brain to the rest of the body. So if I want to move my hand and gesture, that's an unconscious message coming from here to here. And when you break your neck, when you get a spinal cord injury, the brain is still working fine and it's sending those messages, but it's cut off. Like if you snip a wire, your internet's going to go out, for instance. It's the same concept. So this epidural stimulator, which is what it's called, it's the device. The hope is that when it's turned on, it basically reconnects everything. It gets those wires back up and running. And the ultimate goal is to make paralysis a chronic issue, like arthritis or, hip problems, things that are just remedied with medicine and technology. It's not a death sentence. It's not a jail sentence confining you to a wheelchair. It's just, oh man, that's, scary. Could have been a lot worse, but here you go. We're going to put you on this program and you'll be back up going at some point. That's the goal, but we're not quite there yet. But where we are, which is really exciting, is that we're at the stepping phase where you turn this device on and the patients that we've implanted with this device are able to get out of their wheelchairs and stand and take some steps. And it's a moving experience, because growing up with a father who I idolized and still do to this day, he was and is and always will be my hero. It was hard looking at him, knowing how dynamic and adventurous he was and how active he was, and seeing him just sitting there, and it wasn't his fault, and he was just in a wheelchair. And it was hard as a kid to understand. And so seeing people get out of these chairs and stand and step is just so moving, because how much of their life they're reclaiming with each of those steps. What's also exciting about this is that we learned very quickly that those secondary functions I mentioned, the bladder control, the bowel control, sexual function, temperature regulation, that all comes back like right away. So when you're implanted with this device, you regain these functions that the rest of us take for granted every day. And it cannot be overstated how important that is to the quality of life for someone who's living with paralysis and for their family, because a spinal cord injury has this ripple effect on the husband, the wife, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the parents, the grandparents, the children, like the nuclear family. And then it ripples out from there and can affect entire communities in certain ways. And to have someone take back what they deserve, what is an inalienable right of humanity, to be able to live your life to the fullest if you so choose, is really special. So right now we're in the what we call the 80s cell phone phase of the big idea and of epidural stimulation. Like we're not quite in the iPhone phase yet, but thanks to advances in technology, there's something called Moore's Law, where devices get 1.6 times smaller every certain number of years. I'm sure you guys, most of you are in school, you probably know that better than I do, but I know that the technology will get there. So the device will get smaller and smaller and smaller and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and easier to implant in a larger, wider patient base. Right now we've implanted, I think, 15 people and growing, and we're trying to expand it, expand the patient group to include people with different levels of injuries, because spinal cord injuries are classified based on which vertebrae the injury happens at. We're trying to make sure that the patient group includes a diverse population of men, women, different races, ages, and we're going to get there. And it's really exciting. Hope is a tangible thing. So that's the research piece. And I apologize if I'm jumping all over, but I just want to sort of give you a general overview, and then I'm going to open this up to questions. The care piece, the thing that my mom cared the most about when she was, how old was she? 33, 34 years old, when my dad was injured. There was no handbook. There was no hotline to call. There was no path to follow of what happens when your husband is paralyzed from the neck down and is on the verge of possibly dying, and you have a little tiny kid in your tow. Like, what do you do? My mom had to figure it out. And luckily she was a strong and determined and intelligent and just brilliant woman who was able to sort of figure it out as she went. And she had a strong support system of family and friends and a good social network before actual social networks on the internet were a thing. And she was able to sort of figure it out. Like, okay, well, we're going to need to do renovations to our house so that it's accessible for a wheelchair, because he's not gonna be able to go upstairs anymore. So we'll have to move the bedroom to the ground floor and install a little ramp. And we're gonna have to get a special van to travel around with him. And we're gonna have to call ahead to restaurants or movie theaters or my, youth hockey rink to make sure it's accessible. All these things that you would never think of when you are just living your normal life. You wouldn't realize how quickly the spontaneity of life just evaporates like that when someone in your orbit has a spinal cord injury. And my mom had to figure that all out, and she was doing it on the fly, figuring out, like, is Christopher going to survive? It was step one. And then when we knew that he would, it was, okay, how do we get him like better? What do we do? What's rehab look like? How do we figure out the costs associated with this? What is insurance? Like, all this stuff she had to figure out on her own. And over time, as things stabilized a little bit, she realized, okay, there are other people to whom this happens. As I mentioned, 1 in 50 people in America living with some form of paralysis. So it's not an uncommon affliction. And so she, in 2002, established the Paralysis Resource Center, which, as it stands today, has a relationship with this entire network of hospitals nationwide, where if you or someone you love goes into the emergency room with a spinal cord injury and you're paralyzed, once you're stabilized, those 48 hours after the injury are the most important. They sort of determine the trajectory of the rest of your life. And if you get the right care and get the right plan in place, you have a higher chance of a positive outcome versus if you delay or don't have a plan or don't get the right care, that can produce really negative outcomes up to and including death. And my mom realized, okay, we need to have like literally a phone number for people to call when like, okay, this has happened. My brother or my niece or the friend of mine down the street has been injured with a spinal cord injury. You pick up the phone. On the other end of the phone, excuse me, on the other end of the phone is an information specialist affiliated with the Reeve Foundation, employed by the Reeve Foundation at the Paralysis Resource Center, who more often than not will be living with a spinal cord injury themselves. So they have intimate knowledge of the experience. They can talk to the injured as well as the family of the injured, the friends of the injured, to discuss the physical effects, the psychological effects, the financial impacts, everything that you could possibly think of, and more importantly, the things that you wouldn't even think of. We cover all of those and set you up with what you need. Okay, you live in Philadelphia. That means you need to go to this rehab center and you need to get in touch with these insurance folks, and this is where you're going to buy your van, and this is who you're going to talk to in the community to have a peer mentor as someone who has been through this before. And we also literally hand them a handbook. There's this thick book that's like this thick, with every question you could possibly have and things you wouldn't even think to ask. And it's a good starting point for people to help try to manage this really tragic event in their lives. So those are the two main pillars of the Reeve Foundation, of today's care, which is the quality of life, Paralysis Resource Center, all that, and tomorrow's cure. And another piece that I should mention on the quality of life end is my mom realized that life should not end with paralysis. It just changes. But these are still people with hopes and dreams and emotions and complexities and families and friends and hobbies and interests. And my mom knew that people wanted to continue to do those things and wanted to feel as normal as they possibly could while they did the work necessary to try to get out of their wheelchairs. So it started in our backyard and now has expanded into like a, multi-million-dollar per year grant program where organizations and groups across the country and around the world apply for grant money for an adaptive basketball league. They need, a couple extra wheelchairs or new balls, or, they need to buy court time, or the town park needs a new accessible playground. Can we help fund that? The requests are wide and varied, and we have federal funding to help with that we have to sort of sing for our supper for every so often. And I have a funny story about pinch hitting for my sister in that context. If someone asks me about that in the Q&A portion, I'll share that story. But that is the general overview. I'm sure I'm missing things. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me just like scream things at you. What else do I need to do for you here? That's the beginning of my tap dance, but I got my dancing shoes on. So what else can I?
That was a great introduction, definitely. We already introduced the organization a little bit to our members, but that certainly must have inspired every person here because the organization's work is really incredible. So I think now students can just ask their questions. I think I'll start by just asking, what has been your fondest memory working with the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something I should also mention. I am on the board of the Reeve Foundation along with my siblings, Matthew and Alexander. They're my half siblings. We share a dad, but we say there's no half. We're as close as can be. And, in any case, it's hard to pick one memory. I think something that's consistently the most fun, I would say, is our annual gala every year because it's our whole community comes together. It's like the biggest night on the social calendar for everyone in the spinal cord injury community. And we always say that once you're in the spinal cord injury community, you can't leave. You're in. And that's it's sort of the event grows every year, and that's our main fundraising apparatus for the year. Of course, this past year we weren't able to have it, so we had to sort of piece together that sort of funding instead of having this big event where there's, everyone dresses up and there's awards and performances and there are cool, interesting people there. And it's fun to see everyone. And it's a nice benchmark every year to just sort of take stock of how far we've come and where we have to go and what we need to do to get there as a group, as a community. So that's probably like the overarching thing, the thing that I think of the most in my affiliation with the Reeve Foundation. But then I also just think of all the people that I meet along the way, whether it's a newly injured person who is having a tough time and just wants someone to talk to. That's something that my dad spent a lot of his day doing every day, was someone would get in touch with him and say, there's been someone injured in this town. Can you get on the phone with them and tell them that it's going to be okay? And that's what he would do. But he wouldn't give them false hope. He would just sort of explain the way that things were. And I am honored to sort of take on that mantle as time allows. That's really meaningful to me. I think those are things that I care about. Developing relationships with individuals and families impacted by paralysis, I think is something really meaningful to me. And just representing, when I represent the foundation, I'm really representing my family and representing my parents. So any chance that I get to continue my parents' legacy, because just looking at some of your faces, you're all quite young. You may not have been alive when my dad was alive, which is just wild to think about. And, or my mom even. Were any of you born after 2006? Okay, good. We're not, all right. So, you know, it's rare that I feel old. I'm the youngest person at my, who does what I do at my company by a lot. So it's strange to be like, you might not have remembered this, but in any case, there's a whole generation of people who are coming of age who don't really know anything about my parents. And I think when you do start to learn things about my parents, you realize how special they were, how heroic and inspirational they were to millions of people around the world. And that's a huge legacy. Those are huge shoes to fill. And I'm not trying to be my parents, because no one can be. But I am trying to be their son and do that the best that I can. And I mess up a lot, you know, like I make a lot of mistakes in my personal life, as we all do. And it sucks not having my folks around to sort of talk about that with. But on a foundation level, it's a real honor and like a happy, profound obligation to get to take the torch from my parents in even just a small way. I think that's there's not one memory. It's just sort of
the whole experience.
The whole experience means something to me. I'll tell you that our board meetings are so boring because there's lots of numbers and like way smarter people talking, and I'm, you know, I'm with it. I'm down with the cause. I'm very much on the team, but there's sometimes I'm like, guys, you're too smart for me. So I let my sister, who, you know, was like a straight A student at an Ivy League school, I let her take care of all the smart stuff, and I just get to talk with fun people like you.
I have a question. What is the most important message to be passed on by your organization?
The most important message. Well, I think the most important message that we have is metaphorical and literal. Is we are here for you. That metaphorically, we are supporting you. We are a community of thousands of people and millions of people, really, whether they know it or not, affected by paralysis in this country and around the world, who are there to be leaned on and to be called into action when necessary, when someone's dealing with an injury. But then also literally, as I mentioned, with the Paralysis Resource Center and quality of life grants and the research that we're funding and the epidural stimulation, the devices that we're implanting in people, we are literally here for you to help you make it out, like to survive and to thrive and to be okay. Yeah, I think that's the like overarching message. I'm sure that if one of our communications directors from the foundation were sitting next to me, they'd be whispering like, no, say this. But that's like the general idea is we're here for you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Mariana, and I'm the co-founder of this club with Carol. So I actually had a question for most of our members here, and I'm sure like seeing your parents build this organization might help you answer it. But a lot of our members have a cause they're really passionate about and want to start a community service project and maybe in the future a nonprofit. So I was wondering if you had like any advice for them while they're just starting out.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think just the fact that you're all in this group together right now is such a great starting point to be at. It's such a great foundational, no pun intended, foundational group to be a part of, because you're all like-minded and you're all smart and passionate. You care about certain things that mean a lot to you, and when you're with your people, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're with your people, you're going to succeed because you're all sort of pulling the rope in the same way. You're all united around a common goal. As you start to think about the cause that means the most to you, and you don't have to have one cause that means the most to you. Like I fell into this just because my parents were my parents, and they like, I got a call one day, like right after I graduated college, from the president of our foundation going, "You're on the board now. Come to our meeting next week." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I've just sort of, that's just how that started. To me, the causes that like I care most about outside of this, just because this is so personal to me, but the causes that I've sort of like chosen to care about are totally different. And they include climate change, by the way. If anyone wants to get in on the climate change cause, enlist me, because that is the issue of all of our times. And anyway, whatever it is that you're interested in, find your people, find who you're aligned with, and just start small. You don't have to change the world in a day, and you're not going to. So there's no point in getting frustrated when you form a group, you raise a little bit of money, and nothing changes. Like, don't be discouraged. Just double down on your efforts, because if you believe in something and you know it to be right, it is. So use that as the foundation and just keep slowly chugging away and chipping away, recruiting more people to join you, to help you. Host small events first, succeed at those, make the events a little bigger, succeed at those. Just grow gradually, incrementally. Don't be afraid. I hate this, by the way, but I have to do it, and it works. I hate calling people on the phone. Just not my thing. I don't know why. You're going to have to make phone calls or do Zoom calls or send out email blasts to fundraise. Target the people that you can put them in different buckets. There are the people who are like guarantees. Like, I know if I call this person, they're going to help me, whether it's with their time or their money or other resources, or connecting me to someone else who's aligned with this cause, who's going to help me. Then there are people who will probably help you, but they just don't know that they want to help you yet. And you just need to do a little bit of charming and convincing to get them involved. And then there are the big reaches, the big white whales, these people who you like, oh, they would never, want to be around me. They would, who am I? And they're so big. Find them anyway, because I think people innately, it's human nature to want to help other people, whether you believe that or not. I feel that is true. There's a quote that I live by that my dad said, which was, "I believe in the best possibilities of human beings." And if you believe in the best possibilities of human beings while you're trying to advance a cause that you believe in, you're going to attract the best human beings for that endeavor that you're on. And you just have to stick with it, because it's going to be hard. It's not going to be glamorous. You're going to feel like you're failing and not making a difference, but you're going to break through. And you're going to feel so rewarded when you do make those changes, and when you get a call from some person or group or place that you've helped, and they say, "Here's how you helped me. This thing is not possible without you." That is the best feeling in the world. You have to give more than you take. And when you're giving to something that you really care about, I think that is the key to life, personally. I have yet to find something that supersedes that. So that's where I would start. Did that answer your question, or was that just a bunch of word salad?
No, that was beyond perfect. I mean, I want all of that you just said printed on a poster somewhere. It was perfect.
I'll try. Well, this is someone's recording this, so you can just copy it down. You don't even have to attribute me. I give you permission to steal that. So make it more eloquent, though. I was kind of just rambling. So you guys got you can edit.
And I hope that like our members kind of take that and run with it, because I know that all of them have like a cause that they're really, really passionate about, and they're just trying to find a place to start. So that was perfect.
The best, you know where you start? The starting line. There's no one way to start something. Like, put it this way. My parents would not have I can't say this for sure, but I feel pretty confident saying that my parents would not have become the faces of spinal cord injury had my dad not gotten injured. So sometimes you're just thrust into it. I'm sure you guys are reading Shakespeare at some point. Have any of you? I don't know. Delay it if you can. It's hard to understand, but it's important to do. But anyway, there's like some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them, which is a sexual innuendo. So maybe don't use that quote. But sometimes you're just sort of thrown into a situation and you have no choice but to be great, and you sort of learn something about yourself in the process. And I think that's the most fulfilling, rewarding aspect of doing work for other people and for things greater than yourselves. At least that's why that's why I'm, like I said, I'm involved in the Reeve Foundation because it's sort of a birthright, but I'm intimately involved with a whole bunch of other causes, and I spend a lot of time. I devote resources of one kind or another to a bunch of causes that I care about because I know that it's bigger than me. And I've always felt that if you have the ability to help someone, it's your moral obligation to do so. And if you don't help them, you need to take a long look in the mirror. And remember, there's no time like right now to start something. Even if you're like, I haven't helped anyone. What am I doing? I'm selfish. Like, oh God, it's too late. A, it's not. You're all like so young, as am I. But B, I think that you can't change what you haven't done. You can't change the past. And there's no sort of like formalized entry into the helping people business. You just do it. Just go help someone. Just do one small kind thing, build on that. That same principle when it comes to creating an organization with larger ambitions. It starts with like, how do you write a book? You write it. You just do one word at a time. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. Like, there's plenty of pithy phrases I could give you, but just start it and know that if you believe in it, if your heart's in it, you're on your way.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Is there any way, like, or how could we get involved in the Reeve Foundation?
Oh, well, I mean, you've come to the right place. You get my probably emails better from Carol, and you reach out to me, and I will put you in touch with whoever you want. But to answer your question more specifically than that, there are plenty of ways. I used to, in high school, actually, we had a bunch of different charitable clubs in my high school where you would meet, once a month maybe, and it was just sort of whoever wanted to be involved. I just recruited all of my friends. I was like, if you guys want to come over to like swim in my pool, you have to also be in my club and raise money for the Reeve Foundation. And it was a pretty good deal. And we would sell sandwiches from like the local deli, and like once a year we would get a t-shirt made up and sell that. And like I would go hand deliver the cash to like someone from the Reeve Foundation like over the summer. But there are more formal ways that you can get involved. You can host your own what we call parlor events, which are, I mean, right now they have to be on Zoom. In the future, they can be in person. And if the timing works, I'll come down and hang out with you guys. You just get a group of people together. It's a small informal event. You're in high school, so I guess we'll do soda and snacks instead of cocktails, but it'll still be a great time. Just getting people aware of the organization and the issue that we are aligned around is a small way. We also have an arm of the Reeve Foundation called Team Reeve, which I'm actually the captain of. It's, I don't know, why I'm called the captain is probably just because it's called a team. I'm the leader of it, whatever you want to call it. We have a bunch of charity slots in the big marathons, New York, a few in Boston, Marine Corps in DC, we've got some in London, Chicago is another big one. And there's a minimum fundraising floor that you have to just sort of, you tap into your network, whether it's your school, your family, your friends, social group, preferably all of the above together. You raise a certain amount of money and you get access to our trainer, this lovely man called Coach Mark, who sort of trains you remotely. Actually, he was doing remote training before remote training was cool. And you run the marathon for us. The trade-off is you raise money and you get a slot in these marathons that normally are impossible to get into. And we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. This year, or I guess last year in October, we introduced, in place of those marathons, we had the Reeve Run and Roll 5K, which was a virtual thing. You just had to raise a certain amount of money through our website. We have a whole platform, like with a full-time dedicated team, a support staff who like does this for you. You just have to direct your network to donate on this website. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, and you could walk, run, roll in your wheelchair, bike, do it on a treadmill, whatever you wanted. We're going to be bringing that back. That was a great success. That's an easy way if you guys want to do stuff active. But what we're really into, and this is actually something we should talk about, whether it's now or in the future or through Carol, whatever, or just you all can shoot me an email at your leisure. We're always looking for new ideas. There's no one way to fundraise. There's no one way to be involved. And if there's something that I haven't mentioned or that you've seen another group, another organization do that you think would work, like just do that. We're never going to say no to someone wanting to be a part of our movement. And it's just a matter of, depending on the size of the event or the ambitions of the fundraising, we'll support it however we can. We love that. A lot of this stuff has to be grassroots, because that's how you grow a movement. Like, you can have your big corporate donors and your handful of rich folks who are going to donate a whole bunch of money in one lump sum to sort of keep the lights on at your foundation, at your charity, whatever you want to call it. But to actually have a sustainable movement, especially, nearly 16 years since my dad died and 15 years since my mom died, we need to sort of keep the momentum going, because the hope is a real thing, and we need to keep people engaged and skew younger as well. And so we need people like you. So any ideas that you have are great. And even if it's not fundraising, we can organize stuff. Are you all in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think. I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm sure we have good relationships with certain places in Florida, whether it's rehab facilities or hospitals, where you can go and shadow folks who are working with spinal cord injury patients who are trying to walk again, and you can learn about their lives and their struggles, and it makes it a much more visceral, intimate experience to see that. I think that that's something we could easily organize. Everything's on the table, I guess. Those are just the examples that came to mind.
And just quickly, you mentioned the Team Reeve.
Yeah.
Is that something that anyone can participate in? Do they just go to the website and join and then run the marathon?
Well, I mean, so you honestly, I think there might be an age limit.
Yeah, I mean, is it
you guys might be a little
normal person in the world, or?
Yeah, so it basically, you apply through the Reeve Foundation, and we have a specific number of slots, and we have a great relationship, especially with the New York Marathon, because we're based in New Jersey. I live in New York. I've run the marathon. I get all my friends to do it. We're really tight with New York and Chicago. So they keep giving us more slots every year because there's a specific number. They cap it for charity slots, and then the rest of people who aren't running for charity just are in a lottery system, and that's millions of people around the world are trying to run the New York Marathon because it's such a destination event. But yeah, anyone can run it. You go to the Reeve Foundation website, you apply. It helps to say that we're friends because I can see it on my end and be like, yeah, that's cool. Like, sign them up. And you set a fundraising target, and then someone from the foundation will contact you and sort of run through a list of questions like, are you actually capable of running a marathon? And like, what's your training plan? And what's your fundraising plan? Do you think that this is a reasonable goal? Is that too low? Is that too high? And we want to put you in a position to succeed, because if you succeed, we succeed. And if you fail, we fail. So it's a real team effort, and it's pretty straightforward. What's not straightforward is, are there going to be marathons this year? I just read today that the Boston Marathon, which is normally held in April, has been moved to October 11th, COVID permitting. We'll see if that happens. I think we'll be back to some degree of normal by October, but are we going to be back to a level of thousands of people running and breathing and sweating next to each other for 5 hours? I don't know. But we at the Reeve Foundation will be ready for all that, and we would love to have your involvement. And if there's people in your lives who want to run, and because I don't think that you can be 16 and run the marathon. Sorry, my computer decided to update right now. But if there's people in your lives like, oh my God, my great aunt Tilly loves to run. She's always wanted to do a marathon, but she's never gotten into New York. Like, that's a great way to not only beat the system, but to help the Reeve Foundation raise a bunch of money.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good.
And we also do we do those 5Ks, but we've also done like Tough Mudders, and we do walks, and I'm sure we could do like a swim. We do golf tournaments. Like, we do kind of anything that, basically any way that we can get people to give us money to find cures for paralysis and help people living with paralysis, we're game for, as long as it's, legal and moral.
Of course. Any other questions?
No, you can ask personal questions too if you want. We don't have to
I have a question. You mentioned how you replaced the run, but with like the fundraising and all. But how did you go about with COVID, the gala and fundraising for that?
That was hard. We didn't have our annual gala. We did a few paid Zoom events, like this sort of virtual parlor events where you'd buy a ticket and everyone would sort of chat. I interviewed the actor Billy Porter. I don't know if you are familiar with him. He's from that show Pose, among other things. He's won Emmys, and he's a singer. And if you watched ABC for New Year's Eve, he was one of the hosts. He dresses very elegant and ornately. I interviewed him for an hour, talking about things. His mom is paralyzed. So he has that connection, and he and my mom were friends. So we kind of tried to piece it together, but in all transparency, our event, it's called A Magical Evening. It's every November. That we usually raise between $1.5 and $3 million in that night. And we didn't this year. So it's hard. And we realized that people are going through a really hard time right now. Every one of us is going through some version of a hard time. And a lot of people are going through a hard time financially. And the first thing to go when people go through a hard time financially is charitable giving, especially to a cause that is not central to the issue at hand. We're not a food bank. We're not a first responder or frontline healthcare worker charity. But at the same time, we do represent a population that is incredibly vulnerable to this virus, and they need our help in that way. So we've done okay, but it's not, we, along with hundreds, if not thousands of other charities took a huge hit with not having like our big centerpiece event this past year. But that just means, we'll charge double next year. It'll be all good.
I also have another question. So in case, like, for example, anyone here has a relative or a neighbor who has a spinal cord injury, which honestly, according to your numbers, it's really likely. What advice would you give them based on your personal experience to kind of get through it and keep going, not giving up?
I'm not sure I understood the question. I'm sorry. Can you just say that again?
Like if someone newly has a spinal cord injury, other than, of course, using all the resources that the foundation has, what advice would you give them personally of like keeping going and not trying to give up, even though it must seem so impossible?
Yeah.
What you
Well,
went through?
it's hard. I'll tell you a story. This moment saved my dad's life. In 1995, he was newly injured, lying in his hospital bed in the ICU in Virginia, where he was injured. He couldn't even speak at this point. He had just basically, not to be too graphic, had his head reattached to his body, and he could not speak at all. But he could move his mouth, and we could read his lips. And my mom was with him, as she was 24 hours a day at that point. And my dad was in a deep, dark place, as most people are immediately after becoming paralyzed. It's traumatic in every single way. There's no good part about it. And he had me. I was just about 3 years old, and my brother and sister, who were at the time 16 and 12 ish, right around there. So like in the worst possible age for that to happen as a kid. And my dad was miserable. He was this guy. He was so dynamic and was always doing stuff. I'm told that he could never sit still, which is just ironic to me because I sort of only knew him as tragically only able to sit still. But he mouthed to my mom, like, we should pull the plug. We should, I'm just going to be a burden on the family. Keeping me alive is going to be a burden. You should start fresh, take Will, have a life without me, which is a very, very traumatic thing to hear. And I'm sorry if it was traumatic for you to hear there. I know it's a bit of a jolt, but what my mom said changed and saved my dad's life, because she could have said, no, what are you talking? Like, that's crazy. Or you she could have just totally dismissed him. But instead she took him seriously because she knew he was serious. And she said, let's have this conversation in 2 years. 2 years from now, if you still feel the same way you do today, we can have legitimate conversations about what that would look like. And if that's even possible. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in 2 years. But for now and always, you are still you, and I love you. You are still you, and I love you. Those were the words that saved my dad's life, that reminded him and reassured him and reaffirmed that he had value as a human being. He meant something to the people who loved him and who he loved the most, and that there was a life waiting for him, a life waiting to be lived if he just had the strength and the determination and the hope to hold on and to remind himself that he might have physically had his life changed, and he might have changed physically because he could no longer move. And this was a guy who was a big, tall, strapping movie star and confined to a wheelchair. But he was still the same person with a razor sharp intellect and with a kind heart and everything else inside that made him special and made my mom love him and made us in our family love him. So I think to translate that to a broader group is there's not much translation necessary. If there's someone in your life who's going through, whether it's a spinal cord injury or something else, it's not just a spinal cord injury that makes people think that they're not that they don't belong on this earth anymore, or that things are never going to get better. If you can remind these people that who they are has nothing to do with what they are or what they can do or can't do. It's all in here and in here. And it's hard in the moment to remember that about yourself, to know, like, to remember your value and your humanity are not intrinsically and inextricably linked with your physical abilities. And I think that that's the most important message you can give to anyone, is that your physical circumstances might have changed, but who you are as a person and what makes you worthy have not. And you are loved, and you are cared for, and you are supported, and you have a whole team with you on this new journey that's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that would work out really well. The best advice you could give someone. Does anyone else have any other questions? Otherwise, I know you're probably really busy, so.
You know what I have to do after this? I have to make ice cream for my sister-in-law. You know, these COVID hobbies, you know, I don't know if you can see it, but I have an ice cream maker back there, and it's her birthday tomorrow, so I'm going to make her some ice cream and send it to her. We're going to see how it turns out. I could do it live on Zoom, but you guys have other stuff to do. So yeah, and by we, I mean me, making chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, and we're going to see how that goes. But no, I other than that, I'm here, and I'm happy to answer any more questions. And also, I've been on the receiving end of these Zooms. I know sometimes at the end you're like, just end already. So I understand if you guys want to bounce.
Okay, anyone? If you have any questions, just like turn on your mic. And happy birthday to your sister too.
Thank you.
Early birthday.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's
All
about
right.
it. Thank you so much for your time, honestly.
Yeah, guys.
I mean, I can say for myself for sure that once again, you and the organization and your parents and all of it really inspire me. And I think that you've probably inspired everyone else here. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. And
Thank you so much. And I will say, people like you, and you specifically, inspire me. The fact that you're all so young yet engaged and thoughtful and involved in things larger than yourselves is a characteristic of your generation that I think is novel in the best way. I think that you all realize that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. And the fact that you dedicate time out of your busy lives during these crazy times, or not during these crazy times, but the fact that you are all working toward a larger goal, whatever that goal may be for you individually and then as a group, is really powerful. And I think that that's something to be commended and to be supported and celebrated. And if there's anything else that I can do for you along the way, I'm here. I can't promise I'll be checking my DMs all the time, because I still don't. I swear to God, I've not I happened to read that one from you, and it turned out to be the coolest twist of fate.
Yeah.
Maybe I should read more of it. Like, maybe there are other cool people out there who it's just, I don't know. I'm not so great with, I might be a millennial, but I'm not the most technologically inclined person. Zoom is hard enough. But you guys are all great, and I appreciate you taking time. And please don't be afraid to be a friend. I'm around.
Mm-hmm. I also, before you go, I just wanted to take a quick minute to thank, we have Miss Lori here, and also our principal, Miss Lefevre, and also our college counselor and club advisor, Mrs. Palentas, who are all just as excited as we are to be here. It was a great opportunity.
Very, very important. And I have a feeling, which one's the college advisor?
Here I am.
You must be you must be licking your chops having this group. You're like, oh, I'm gonna get them in wherever they want to go. They're so engaged and involved and smart and awesome.
I have to say,
They make your job easy.
So really proud of this group, and especially Carol and Mariana for coming up with this idea to create this club, and you know, having you speak with us tonight is a great honor, and we truly appreciate your time. I'm sure it's been an inspiration to not only me, but all of them. And I'm sure that we're going to have some of them work for your foundation and do some wonderful things. So on behalf of everybody, cool. Thanks again. And yes, you're right. I am so happy with this group. And, yep, it will help them in college admissions. That's true. But I don't think.
Yeah, but that's not why. That is not why we do these things.
That's right.
Yeah,
they really.
Not why we do these things.
We're very fortunate to have this group of kids that work so hard and that really have come up with amazing ideas to help people, and continually do it, and have not let COVID stop them. They continue just coming up with amazing things to do, and we're very proud of them. And we do want to thank you for spending time with them and talking to them about your life and your foundation and different ways that they can get involved and come up with ideas of their own. We really appreciate your time, and we thank you for being here.
Absolutely, guys. It was a pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you so much. You guys can all just thank him, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds like a plan. You guys have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.